Oh, wait, what's that? The three suns have aligned. The crystal has been healed. Guys, it's time to talk about Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal. Oh, I'm so excited to talk about this
Yeah.
movie. I'm so excited.
Let's go.
One of my favorite movies. I love this movie, and I'm so excited to talk about this movie with you guys for this episode of the Cinema Dubs podcast. I am Rex, and I'm very happy to be here right now. And what's that? He purple, how I crystal. It's Derek. Derek, my
Hey.
friend. How are you, my buddy?
I'm doing great.
Good, good. It's- uh, d- uh, you, other person, our special guest, Emily. Emily, how are you?
I am excited.
Yes, I am also very excited to talk about this movie. I do want to go over like our sort of personal history with this movie, our thoughts on the movie, and that sort of stuff. But first, I want to ask you guys, how did you enjoy the movie we just watched?
Emily, you want to go first?
Sure. I've always very much enjoyed watching Dark Crystal. It's something very different from a lot of things I've watched, where it's not quite outer space, not quite Earth. Uh, you know, and I've always been a Jim Henson fan. So watching that and having watching it before, I always enjoy watching this film.
Same. There's like legit no other movie that's like this movie. It's in a league of its own. Even like Labyrinth, which was made like 4 years after this movie, it's still like that's a totally different vibe. Even though that's also like a Jim Henson sort of puppety kind of thing. The Dark Crystal
Yeah.
just stands on its own. Derek, how do you feel after
Yeah.
watching the movie?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. Like you guys said, like it's a very different movie. That's like one of the things I really appreciate and love about it. Just Jim Henson wanting to make something like you've basically never seen before. I honestly, I even still think like 43 plus years, like we still haven't seen anything like this movie. It's just like really incredible. Like I still can't believe that this movie like even exists. That anyone like greenlit this movie. Like it's a miracle that it even exists in the first place. I'm so happy he was able to get something like this off the ground. Really.
Or that they were even able to pull enough resources together to actually complete a film like this, where there's no people, it's all made up, it's all puppets, it's all people in suits and shit. So I love it. This is exactly my kind of movie where it's just it's a totally made up world with made up people and made up shits happening, and it's very heartfelt. I feel it has a very strong heart to it. So I feel like whenever someone brings up some argument about not being able to connect with a character because they're not human or you can't see their face or some bullshit like that, this movie is all about puppets. It's all puppets. It's all weird shit. Nothing's human. And still, I very much connect with all these characters. Even the bad guys, even the Skeksis, I still love them too, in all their awful, terrible glory. Well, I think actually this, for many years now, this has been like perhaps my favorite movie of all time. Ever since I saw it. Actually, I think I was 8 years old when I first saw this movie. I was 8. I remember my father. My father showed
was
me
8
the
years
Dark
old.
Crystal. He was 8 years old too. Oh, that would be terrible if Joker was an 8-year-old, just like, "Hello, Batman.
I thought that
Where's my
exists
Chucky
already.
milk?" Oh, gross. An 8-year-old Joker terrorizing
Like-
Gotham? Disgusting.
Like one of those like like how like in the 80s especially there were like all those like spin-offs of shows where it's like the characters but like as babies, like Muppet babies or stuff like that. Like I feel just like a Batman version of that.
Gotham babies.
Yeah.
It's time to poison the water supply in kindergarten. I guess somewhere in the multiverse that's gotta exist. But yeah, I was 8 years old when I first watched this movie, and I remember father told me that at first, when we were gonna watch this movie, that it was gonna be kind of scary, but after seeing it, I was gonna want to watch it again. And so we watched the movie, and I was drawn in for the whole time, just my eyes glued to our TV watching this movie. And then after like the credits roll, and I just remember realizing he was right, and I immediately wanted to watch the movie again. But then also I kind of like wanted to process what I had just seen. And I remember the day after that, I was at school, and all I could think about was watching this movie again. So I had to watch it like every day for like a while. um, and so I think it's solidified its place as one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'm curious to hear for you guys what your personal sort of origins with this movie are.
Yeah, I think I first heard about this movie when I was in middle school. I think maybe before that, but I feel like it was middle school. That was around when I was starting to get more into film and animation history and all that kind of stuff. And I was looking into the history of Jim Henson as a filmmaker. And that's when I found out how he made other stuff besides the Muppets. Like there were like all these other projects that he worked on and stuff like that. So like I like this just feels like one of those movies like I kind of just like always knew about. But I feel that's like the earliest time I can like pinpoint like when I knew about it. I don't know, and I never really felt like a need to seek it out other than like if it ever like showed up for me yeah, I'll watch it. But I never like felt like a need to like actively seek it out. And then a few years ago I believe for the 40th anniversary, they did a re-release with Fathom Events where they showed the movie in theaters, and then me and Rex went to go see it, and that was honestly a really great experience. I'm glad that my first viewing experience of the movie was in theaters, just because I feel like that really heightened the sense of scale and wonder in this kind of movie. Like I'm someone who always appreciates a good theatrical exhibition, so I'm glad that they gave it a good anniversary rollout. And yeah, I was even saying when we were watching it before how like the movie just feels very like otherworldly, or like you're like transported to like a different time once the movie
Yes.
begins, and like I think that's a really great thing about it.
Oh yeah, that perfectly encapsulates the power of this film to like it literally transports you like I'm so happy that I have a movie that can like transport me to a different place for like an hour and a half. I always forget how short this movie is. It
Yeah,
feels
it's pretty
like
short.
so much longer to me just because I don't know, there's so much to like take in with this movie. And so I'm very glad I can just come back and re-enter the world of the Dark Crystal. Emily, what's your personal history with this film?
Well, I can't really pinpoint an exact uh age range. I mean, I think I was also around like middle school age. I know there was this one like Jim Henson book that my brother had that I read, and it was talking about like his career and like his different interests. Because I learned that pre Muppets he did some sort of like some surrealism stuff,
hmm
and then they went into like the Muppets part, and then they were like the Dark Crystal and how like it didn't do so hot in the box office because people were
Hmm.
like, but it's not the Muppets. And I'm like, but it's something different. Like, it looks cool. Like, what's wrong with it not being the Muppets, you know? And I remember my dad telling me that he saw it in theaters, like, when it first came out. And it was kind
Wow.
of like what that book was saying, where my Mima took my dad to see this movie because she was thinking, like, oh, it's Jim Henson. It's like, it's a kid's movie. And then they're there watching the oh, I can't even, I'm having a brain fart. The the little guys getting their essence taken out, and
Oh
my
yeah, the
dad's like,
podlings.
probably, yeah, podlings. My 6 year old, I think it's probably 6 year old dad's there watching these podlings getting their essence taken out. But I mean, he said he wasn't really that scared of it. He was more or less like, this is weird as a kid. And then like later down the line, I think I mentioned the movie, and he was like, I should rewatch it because it's been so long, and like so then we end up watching it and like, yo, this movie's like really good. Like people were ripping it for like no reason.
Yeah, because like, well, I mean, that's a strange thing with people, right? If you do the thing that people aren't used to you doing, suddenly there's all, oh,
Yeah.
but how could you do the not
Hmm.
thing? This is a different thing. I can't believe
Hmm.
this. Which I don't know. I'm sure there's a word for what that is in our sort of technical lexicon, but I don't know. That's a strange effect to have. Because I mean, I feel like it's important for people like Jim Henson, like artists,
Hmm.
to explore and try out different stuff.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I feel like I'm really glad he did this movie, but
Yeah.
and I love the Muppets, but also that's a gigantic sort of uh, cornerstone in our popular culture. So it to me it's kind of a bit of a shame that it sort of overshadows his other work, but at the same time it also draws people into that because it's a Jim Henson thing. So people are like, oh, what is this thing? Um, and I do know that well actually well that scene with the podlings that you were just talking about that terrified me as a child.
Yeah.
Seeing the tiny, because like when you see like their eyes turn gray and their skin,
Yeah.
the little podling skin shrink, that was so creepy. It's so well done. um
Yeah.
and also the what's his face, Skektek or Skek, the scientist dude.
Or
Yeah, he's
oh
really
yeah.
creepy. He's like super creepy. He might be my favorite Skeksis, just because he's so with his hands. Oh, gross. His like rusted out hands. I hate it. I love it, but I hate. And he has like a little eye thing.
Yeah, like where it's like a mirror or a light or something.
Yeah, it's like a weird. Because the designs for all these different creatures were really interesting to me, and how they're all unique. But
Hmm.
some of them. There was one Skeksis, Skek, Skexo.
Yeah, I don't know the plural either.
Yeah, the pluralization of Skeks. Anyway, the one had like three pairs of glasses on for its like
Yeah.
bill horn snout thing, and they all have like very sort of elaborate costumes and whatnot. I was kind of curious to hear what you guys thought about sort of the character design of this film.
I th-
I thought it was oh sorry.
no, you can go, Emily.
Uh, I thought it was like really thought out. They definitely like really wanted to create like a specific environment, and especially with the character design, like they really wanted the Skeksis to be like gross and like they kind of like remind me of like baby birds.
Oh yeah.
Like when they're hatched right out of the egg, like they're like all scrawny but kind of like wrinkly, and they kind of like that's what the Skeksis kind of reminded me of. And like I feel like now I feel like I'm like um this might be a stretch, but I was thinking like how the Skeksis, they had this gross aspect, but they also have all like these like riches and like fancy in quotations clothing, and how they're there eating all the animals, and like they have the problem the slaves. So wait, where I wrote it down. Where's it at?
Oh,
Oh,
you were
like where
smart.
it's
You
almost
wrote
kind
it
of
down.
like uh where I feel like it was almost kind of like a metaphor for like greed slash power in some way, where it's like, yeah, they live this lavish life and they're all evil and everything, but they're also incredibly disgusting. Both
Hmm.
like personality for doing those awful things that they do, and also like physically, like they're all like kind of decrepit in some way.
Oh yeah, totally. And I know that. So I watched the earlier today. I watched the documentary The World of the Dark Crystal, which goes over like
Mhm.
the making of the movie in certain aspects. And I know that with the design of the Skeksis, they Brian Froud, who like did Jim Henson like contacted to make all the like sketches and stuff of all the creatures and stuff. He Brian Froud uh said that for the Skeksis, uh They needed to be sort of part reptile and part bird and part dragon, and had to be all this kind of like
Hmm.
gross amalgamation of different things. And that also, early on in their development, they sort of kind of or were based on the seven deadly sins initially, but then in total there's nine Skeksis, so that doesn't really fit either. So I guess I sort of took it as well, like their whole thing is they're drawing power from the world, right? They're
Mhm.
abusing the power of the crystal to for their own gain. And even like with the podlings, draining their essence and stuff so that they can be younger and live longer. So I took that as sort of the ultimate abuse of power in every aspect of their
Yeah.
lives, no matter what they're doing. Even when they're eating or standing or fighting or whatever it is, it's always terrible. Um, so, but Derek, what did you think of the character design for this film?
Yeah, honestly, I don't. This might be hyperbole. I don't know, but I feel like this might be the Jim Henson Company's like best work to date when it comes to character designs. Uh,
Yes.
just because of the fact that like with the type of movie that Henson and his team want to make with Dark Crystal, it's like you have to fully convince the audience about this place being a real living world, which I guess kind of goes for like not just the character design, but I think also the whole production design as a whole. And like there is not 1 second of this movie where I don't believe that any of the characters that we see or environments like have a soul to them, or like these are like legit real places. Like I feel like Jim Henson just like took a camera and went to like some other dimension and like filmed all this. Like I am like fully convinced that these are real characters and like real people, and just like from all the different races, from like the Skeksis to the Gelflings. And another thing too, I really love when it comes to the characters is that like even though they're very intricately detailed with both in terms of their costume design and just like the creature designs as a whole, I also feel like the movie also kind of follows the less is more philosophy, because like you don't see too many of each uh of each race. Maybe the Podlings you do see like a decent amount of them, but like with the other races, like you don't see that many of them. I feel that like that room to leave things up to interpretation within the story and characters, I think, is one of the things that kind of makes it such a interesting world in the first place. And yeah, I
Mhm.
think that just kind of circles back to the character designs, like, and like the puppetry on them is like just the way that like there's like no other characters I've seen in them like these kind of movies that move the way that these characters do. Like I I I I have to, I definitely got to watch that behind the scenes documentary you've seen on this movie, because I've seen parts of like how the movie was made. But like I definitely want to dive deeper into the puppetry of it, because it's like it's so insane. Like how
It
they were
is.
able to pull a movie like this off. Like
I know, yeah, because it takes so much effort to do every little thing in this movie. So it's I applaud everyone who worked on this film because it really
Yeah.
shows it really, and that documentary is definitely worth watching. It's not even an hour long. It's like 55 minutes long or something. So it's definitely worth checking out. But I can mention to just to your points that actually uh that Jim Henson wanted specifically to start with developing the world first and what everything looked like and what the characters looked like, so that he could grow the story out from what he created. And they even had like I think Brian Froud drew like a map of the whole like the land of the Dark Crystal, whatever the hell the world is called, and that he studied like different religions and philosophies and stuff to understand what these characters were doing and how they operated before they did the story, which is I think actually Gary Kurtz is in this
yeah,
documentary too, and
yeah, he was the
he
producer of the movie. Yeah.
yeah, right, yeah, he's the dude with like the Abe Lincoln beard.
Yeah, well, at least at the time he was. Yeah.
Right. And he said that the way Jim was doing this movie was sort of the opposite of the typical way of like doing a movie where you write the script first and then you figure out what everything looks like. This Jim wanted it to be more organic and more he needed um all these characters to feel like they really lived and breathed. And that was also why with during production he was so meticulous with like what takes they would use and how many takes they would use and how they would rehearse and how they would like choreograph everything, because any movement that looked too much like a puppet, Jim Henson felt like he couldn't use, because then that would take you out of the movie. So
Mhm.
he brought in what's his face? He was like a Swedish choreographer, Jean Pierre Amiel, um, who was able to work. They amassed like a cast full of like dancers, clowns, mimes, acrobats, anyone who could like express their performance with their whole body. So that way, Jean Pierre Amiel could train them for like I think almost a year or like 8 months or something in how to like figure out how each individual character moved. And so they would
Wow.
be able to choreograph everything. Because like the thing about wearing these puppets is that your right hand, or like whichever is your strong hand, that is the head of your puppet.
Hmm.
So that would mean that the rest of your body has to be like not cramped, but like conformed inside the suit, in order to fit. And they have of course you can't see inside the thing, right? Because that's not your real head, so you can't see anything. So they have like these chest mounts where there would be a tiny screen mounted to your chest, so you could look down and then see what the cameras are seeing, and so you'd be able to see
Oh.
what you're doing that way. And they
Mhm.
had like a whole system, a whole video system where they could record what the cameras were seeing in like a lower quality, and then like play it back, and then see the take they just did to see what if it was good, what worked, what didn't work, so that way they could finally get a usable take to use for each shot and everything. And I thought that's an insane amount of work to put into just doing a movie for like every single movement. Well, like with Jim played Jen. Um,
Yeah.
and one thing he said about Jen was that getting Jen to walk right was tricky, because with doing just a Muppet walk, it's just easy because they're Muppets, so you can just move your hand. But with Jen, the only way Jim could do Jen was that he had to put Jen directly above his head and walk, and that was it.
Hmm.
That was how he had to do it for every take. So, um, I just thought that was like it was really interesting to see into his process of how to like figure out everything and like how to make it the best he could possibly be.
Mhm.
Um, or even like the sets, because I know they filmed in England in a studio for like the interiors and stuff, but then they would also go on location out in like Scotland or anywhere else in the UK. So I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about all the different sets and the different environments in this film. Derek, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I can't distinguish between like the sets and like on location stuff because everything is so seamless in this movie and so real. Like I like what I love about the set design in this movie is that like there's no room to like see where like any corners were cut or like what like bleeds into like, oh, that's a movie set. Like there's like no line. Like it's just like this is like the world of the movie and that's it. Like there's no like I don't know, like I don't want to be like a like all movies back then were better kind of guy, but like I feel like with a lot of, especially when it comes to like the fantasy genre, a lot of films, like when it comes to their approach to production design, I feel like they're, I don't know, just like sometimes like with some films, I just feel like there's like sometimes a limit of like how far they go to
Hmm.
making the world believable. But with a movie like this, is just like even like and the budget wasn't even like that big, uh, like $25 million, which I mean like for 1982 was like a bit more than now, obviously, but still like regardless, like it's not like a massive budget or anything, and they still found a way to craft this world that just feels real, like when it comes to its sets and everything. And it's not even just like with the set design itself, but also like understanding other fundamentals of the production, like lighting, and like how to introduce naturalistic lighting into your sets to make them feel more lived in and more real. I think is like goes a long way into making a lot of these scenes feel as real as they can, because I mean it is real. Like that's there's no question
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah, right. Like everything was built or fabricated, or and you're right, it is very seamless. It's very like even like looking at like shots where half of it is like a matte painting, like painted on glass, and then the other half is uh like Kieran Shaw climbing on like the side of a rock or something. That's you still can't really tell. Even after watching this movie so many times, I there are still shots that I can't tell because Kieran Shaw is an actor who's I think 3 feet tall, under 3 feet tall. I forget. But he played Jen whenever Jen was like walking freely around. Um, when we first enter Agra's uh like a lair lair
Uh,
house.
yeah,
I'm
house,
not sure what to call it 'cause
their
it's
her
fortress.
interesting.
her fortress.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, her astronomy tower, her anyway, that opening shot where we're pushing in to see the giant uh uh the how to know when the thing that thing that's Kieran walking in, and then we cut to a different shot where it's Jen the puppet as the face looking around,
Mhm.
or even like when Jen jumps out of the window to escape, that's Kieran. And then rolling down the hill, I'm pretty sure that's also Kieran or another actor to do that. So, and they're pulling like all sorts of different techniques with this movie. There's a lot of blue screen usage to
Mhm.
composite because like I feel like that's a big misconception with movies about nowadays. Like whenever
hmm
people complain about movies, oh, there's too much green screen, there's too much blue screen in movies. Now, blue screen has existed since like the 1930s. Like
hmm
it's not
Yeah.
a new thing. It's a widely used thing, but it's not a new technique. Because like,
Yeah.
I mean, even look at the original Star Wars. All
yeah,
those like every shot where there's a spaceship or the Death Star or the Millennium Falcon or a Tie Fighter, that's all blue screen. That's all compositing. That's all. You have to have like what was it? A mat or
hmm
a reverse mat to like block out your ship, so that way you could have it on like one piece of film. That's another thing that's hard for me to understand how to work with film because we don't do that anymore. But
right.
anyway, stuff like that is really tricky to do. Um, and so now I think, now we have a lot more tools to make our movies and stuff, but also that adds a lot more variables to where, or even like, even just considering what do people realize is fake and breaks the illusion. I do wonder about that with movies now and how well adept people are because now that AI is crazy, everyone just complains about AI or blames
hmm
it's just some AI generated whatever the hell. But I mean, a lot of times, like even sometimes, it might not be AI. Maybe it's just Adobe After Effects, or
Right.
maybe it's something somebody
Yeah.
cooked up in Blender. So um, I never try to knock the the artist or the tools that they use, but how they use them.
hmm
Um,
Mhm.
and I feel like that's really what makes this film feel real. Is how we use the tools, or how Jim Henson used the tools to craft his movie. Um, I will break the immersion a little bit for you guys, just for the sake of enlightening you. But the exterior of the castle, of the big dark scary castle, there was never a full um a full scale set made of that. It was always a
Oh
miniature.
yeah. I
Oh, okay.
I kind of got that vibe just because like the way any scenes like there are shot is mostly just like interior scenes, and anything like from the outside, yeah, it's just like, yeah, it probably should just be either be a miniature or like matte painting. So I kind of
Yeah.
figured.
Right. Which also, considering budget, like that would be an important thing to like wisely spend your money and
Yeah,
not just throw everything at the wall just because.
true.
So Jim Henson was smart and made a miniature of the castle, or even like the very first shot where we see like all the lightning going underneath the thing.
Yeah.
That entire miniature is like on a soundstage. So like the
Mm.
whole landscape is
What?
a soundstage, and they have all the different smoke machines to create atmosphere and lighting to make it look really dreary and gross. I think maybe the rocks in the foreground are blue screen elements, or maybe they're just put in front of the camera. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was really cool because I didn't even think of that. Like I did not consider that for this movie. It's all fake. Just all of it is fake. Which I mean, like, duh, because it's a movie. But also,
Yeah.
it's so immersive that I get sucked in every time. Um,
See,
there's something else I wanted to
it
say. Oh,
if the
you go ahead.
production is if the production designer of this movie was Alex McDowell, the guy who was the production designer on The Crow, I feel like he would have wanted to make the castle like legit, like in person, because I know he was pretty bonkers as a production designer. Like I always think about like whenever I think of him, I don't not just The Crow, but also so he wasn't the production designer on this movie, but the '90s Casper movie. He was like an
Mm.
original consultant on, like he was originally brought on with like the previous director of that movie, and like there's some exterior shots in that movie of the haunted mansion where Casper lives in, and it kind of clashes with the rest of the movie just because it has a very like intricate and gothic design, and like they like actually like built the actual like mansion for real for the movie, and it was like kind of insane. uh but yeah, just a little side thing there with that. Yeah.
Is that the 1994 The Crow, or
Yeah, 90, yeah, from 1994. Yeah,
I love that movie. I really have. You guys seen that movie?
I haven't.
I
Oh,
have
you should
not.
totally watch it. You should totally watch it. I mean, I feel like I'm the kind of person to like that movie just because it's very dark and it's about death. So of course I have to love a movie about death, but I totally recommend watching that movie. Um oh yeah. Something else I wanted to quickly mention was that um like with designing the other characters, like like the Gartham, the gross giant
Yeah.
Yeah.
shelled beasts. They were based
Mhm.
more on like crustaceans and different shelled creatures, and they went through like a whole 2 year long design sort of evolution to
What?
finally meet end up where to what we see in the movie. And even their one claw, their strong claw, kind of looks like a crab claw, but it's like
Yeah.
they're all glossy. They're all um I don't know what's the word. Not glittery, but it's like purple. There's like a purple sheen to their uh costume. Not costume. Like well, I guess it is a costume, but you're not supposed to think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really love the Gartham. Cuz they were terrifying. I remember being terrified
Yeah.
of them. Like as soon as they emerged, there's something about a giant hulking behemoth barreling towards you. That was just terrifying to me. Um, and each one is just a single performer.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. So I think each one. I think actually for a lot of these characters, they're a single performer doing with like it'll be someone in the suit, but then for some of them, there's like three other operators with like remote controls and stuff to operate the eyes and the or like a twitch of the face or like eyelids or any other small little thing or like a hand, right? Because now
Yeah.
if you're in the suit, your one hand is a head and then your other hand is something else. So, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, with the Gartham, it would just be one person per suit, And then because it was like 50 pounds of weight that they were carrying around, they would have to immediately after a take, they would have to go to like these racks to be held up and just to take a break from lifting all that weight
Yeah.
around. Um, which was another thing about the making of this movie that I didn't consider, but all the costumes had to be made so that you could take them off in under a minute. So that way, if there was a 10-minute break, everyone could take a break. Just because it's a big strain on
Yeah.
everybody to do this kind of work. So, I'm glad that they were able to stick it through and make this movie. Because it really shows. It really shows. Oh, and I know you guys definitely want to talk about the score of this
Oh
movie.
yes,
It
yes,
is beautiful,
absolutely,
absolutely beautiful.
yes.
Derek, what do you have to say?
Yeah, Trevor Jones. I'm not familiar with like much of what Trevor Jones has scored for film. I've probably seen at least like one other movie that he scored, but his work here, like, and it also kind of reminds me of something else I wanted to say about the movie. It's like it's so weird because like I feel like what Henson wanted to do with this movie, like in the early '80s, was kind of make a throwback epic, like in the sense of like stuff from like the 1950s and 60s, and I feel like the score really reflects that because the way that the score is composed, like it does remind me a lot of those sweeping like grand scores
Yes.
from like early Hollywood, um, which I mean that was still like obviously like being done like in the '80s, but I remember this was like a point in that one John Williams documentary that was on Disney Plus recently, how around that time, like late '70s, early '80s, there was kind of like starting to be a point in Hollywood where you start to see less of those orchestral scores happening in Hollywood. I know there was a big adoption of synth and stuff like that, like throughout like the '60s and '70s. So
Yeah.
that was like one of the reasons why a movie like Star Wars was such a big deal, just because Williams deciding to go for a full orchestral score for that movie. And I think the Dark Crystal also follows that in that same philosophy where it's like if you're gonna make a movie like this, like yeah, like it is like a fantasy film, like you could go for like the synth or whatever and like make it like weird and like kind of match the vibe of the movie. But I think going for like this big orchestral score I think was definitely the right choice to make. And I think
Yeah.
it helps in the movie's aesthetic to be timeless in that way because uh just because that's like a tried and true way of doing the music for a movie. I think it really like you could just watch the movie and not really question like the period it was made because it just has like that timeless feel to it. So uh yeah, I think the score is like definitely in that. Like I love the overture that plays like over the beginning and like again like later in the credits and like how that light motif like repeats itself throughout the runtime. It just it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, it gets stuck in your head. I mean, it's hard to
hmm
like pull it out again. I also do really love when Jen is holding Kira and there's like the
hmm
strings going off in the while everything is crumbling. That
Oh
I
yeah.
always think about that. Yeah. Emily, do you have a favorite moment for the score of this movie?
I mean, I agree with the overture, like how it kind of plays at the end when it's like the world is restored,
Yeah.
and it's like the music kind of like really conveying that idea. But I also thought like going back to uh the crustacean inspired creatures,
Oh yeah.
like this kind of like creepy-ish music for that, or it was like music that when I was hearing it I was like I don't like the sound of this, but I think they did that intentionally because like you're not supposed to like those creatures. And like another thing with character design with those is that he just had these like little beady purple eyes. And there's
Yes.
that scene when Jen is like, "Huh, I just fell through the floor. Where am I?" And you see all the eyes show up, and it's like, "Oh no!" Like you know exactly what's down there until they like come out of the shadows, and that like music's playing again. So I thought like the use of light motifs for like stuff like that was used really well.
They're always clicking the Gartham. They're always like
Yes.
clickety clacking around, so it like that. I feel like it's smart to like pair both the score and different sound elements together with specific characters, because then that like, even if you don't think you notice it, you do, because sound is half the picture. So that always like gets stuck in my head with how, or even like them clacking their claws together when they're trying to grab Jen or the podlings or something, or even them walking. It's like a deep sort of like a barrel, or like a thumping sound. It's so gross, but I love it at the same time. Or even when they're like focus on something, there's like a little kind of like a little bit of a sound element there that is more. I feel like sound overall is a bit more. It's there, but it's not as bombastic or crazy
Yeah.
as a lot of other movies of the 80s, where it's not trying to yank your attention. It's like it's just there enough. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm very happy about that. I did just look up. I thought this was interesting that Trevor Jones, the composer, also did uh Time Bandits. Have you guys seen that movie?
No. Is that a Terry
No.
Gilliam movie?
Yes, from
Yeah.
1981.
Yeah. I haven't seen that, but I've heard of that movie. Yeah.
Emily, have you seen that movie?
No, I have not.
It is fucking crazy. That shit is fucking because that's also like kind of a fantasy movie, but where there's also like time travel and shit, and like we start off in like the present day where it's like 1981 and it's a kid's bedroom, and then a bunch of dwarves come in and they're in like knight's armor and shit, and then there's like a portal thing, and then there's a giant face who's like, return my shit, give it back to me, it's fucking mine. And then they go to like France, where it's like Napoleon is there, and he's like, I want to see a theater play. I came from nothing and I conquered nothing.
Concrete nothing.
Show me nothing. And then they have to pretend they're in like a play. And then there's like this other like B storyline with like a princess or something who we keep seeing. I don't even remember, but that movie is so fucking wild that it's hilarious to me that I didn't even realize that the composer is like the dude who did the Dark Crystal. It's amazing. Um, but yeah, if you're in the mood for like, if you want to be confused, watch Time Bandits. It's
Okay.
yeah, it's a strange time, but um anyway, back to Dark Crystal. I really love the score used when they do the trial by stone.
Mm.
Which
Oh
feels,
yeah.
yeah, it's like big and momentous. That, like, there's like some serious consequence to whoever loses the trial. What did you guys think of that scene?
Uh,
I I thought it was like, at least the ending part of that scene felt like really strange. Like, I know I mentioned this when we were watching, but like where they just took Chamberlain's clothes and they just left him there, and he
yeah.
was just like
Ah,
and
ah, ah.
and I was just like, this feels really uncomfortable. But I think they intentionally did that because they like want to show like how uh what's the word, like strict or like consequential that consequence is or whatever. Because it was the, I think, general guy who was like trial by stone,
Right,
and
yeah.
then it was like, okay, and then they just kind of pulled out that stone, and then uh they're whacking it. And I think when the general guy like whacks that stone off and it's like red, like it's like burning, I think the music
Yeah.
like just stops because
Yes.
everyone's just like, oh, whoa.
I love that. Yes. Like it stops to a screeching halt. I love it. It's so memorable. It's that stuck with me forever. Almost as if his swing had so much power that
Yeah,
it nearly melted the stone. Um, and
because
also,
I think.
oh wait, you go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
You go ahead.
Because I think when they start cornering Chamberlain, there's a shot where the general guy's just standing there like, I won. But he's standing behind the rock, and there's like smoke coming from
Yes.
the rock.
Yes. I love
And
it.
I just
There's
thought
so
that
much
was like
smoke in this
crazy.
movie.
Yeah.
Everywhere it's always smoking or something's on fire. I love it. Um I do know that in that documentary I watched, Jim Henson mentioned how specifically with that scene he wanted Chamberlain to be stripped of his like clothes and stuff because that was like in his mind, because this a lot of this stuff that Jim Henson developed doesn't come across in the movie because it's not exactly important for the story, but it is important for the world that Jim Henson is trying to manifest.
Yeah.
That the Skeksis very much care about their clothes, and their fashion and all their, because they do also wear like jewelry and stuff, or like I think they wear like different chest plates and like different rings and stuff. But no, overall, Jim Henson thought of their jewelry as more of their clothes are their jewelry. Their clothes show off their. It's almost kind of like they're all sleazy peacocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all assholes. They're all bougie assholes. And so
That's a good description.
that's they're all bougie alligator assholes. And so that's why it's important that Chamberlain is stripped of all his clothes and stuff. And well, I think especially, and this even goes back to what you were saying, Derek, about like the whole less is more thing. So that it's not, the movie visually is not trying to like stun you the whole time. It's trying to give you exactly what you need when you need it. Especially with like the different characters and the castle and whatnot. Or even like the characters' voices, I think, because I've tried to like match up whose voice belongs to which like character, and even I feel like even like between cuts sometimes the Skeksis voices change, and I feel like that's not really a bad thing, because I feel so attached to all the performances that I can't imagine it being different. But I feel like I would, if I was making this movie, I would go insane in terms of continuity to try to like keep everything together. Like I actually, I wonder if you guys noticed this. The dude with like the claw hand, like who he like all the podlings come out to like pull the chain to raise the stone with the swords. And at first he's like, roll slaves, roll harder. And then, but then like we cut to something else. And then we cut back to him, and then his voice is all pull harder, pull, and it's like a totally but that's the same character. And I don't care at all. Actually, I love both voices. And he never really speaks again for like the whole movie, so it doesn't matter. But I don't know. What did you guys think of all the different vocal performances in this film?
Yeah, it's really interesting because like I do know. I mean, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, Rex, because you know much more about the development of the movie. But wasn't it like in the original cut, like all the voices weren't in English, right? And like Henson like wanted the movie to like be like in this foreign, like unknown alien language, and like just like let the visuals tell the story, basically. But then I guess like it just didn't really seem like a good idea, so he had like actual like English vocal performances for the movie with the different cast members. But yeah, no, I think the vocal performances are great. Like I really like this cast. It's a very small cast, and I remember I think the first time I watched it, I thought that whoever puppeteered the character also did the voice, but then I learned that like no, like most of the characters, it's like the puppeteer and the actual voice are two different people.
Yeah.
So, but I think like even that I think to me makes it more impressive, if anything, because now you have to make sure that your vocal performances matches whatever the actual puppeteer was trying to do with this character, like for each given scene.
That's true, yeah, because I know
Yeah.
both Dave Golds and Steve Whitmire are doing voices for the Skeksis.
Yep.
I think Dave Golds is also Fizzgig, like the tiny little dog, little ball thing.
Probably, yeah.
And then I'm not sure because Frank Oz puppeteers Augra, but obviously he doesn't voice her.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not actually sure if Frank Oz is doing a voice in this movie.
I think. Oh, sorry.
No, yeah, wait, you go ahead. You have a theory?
I think he was. I think he was both the puppeteer and the voice for Chamberlain, because the voice is very Grovery to me. Like it sounds kind of like Grover, just a little more creepy. Or like because I know he was listed in the credits for something for Chamberlain, but I want to think he was maybe the puppeteer for him as well.
Oh
Although
yeah,
I know he
He
definitely
did
did the
puppeteer
voice.
Chamberlain.
Okay.
I just looked it up. Yeah, you're right. Holy shit! I never thought about that. He's like
Because the way.
if Grover grew up behind a dumpster in a Walmart. Like that's amazing. Anyway, continue.
Because I remember when I first watched it, I could like instantly tell it was Frank Oz because just the way he's like, and like just the way his voice is, I'm like he's very like Grovery, and like there's certain Frank Oz characters like with his voice acting that sound similar, but they're different enough where it's like, oh, that's not Fozzie, that's Ernie, you know. But
Yeah,
like,
right.
it's enough where it's like, oh, well, that's the same guy that does Grover or Miss Piggy and Yoda, and
Wow, there's
I don't know.
a lot of people voice the podlings. For
Yeah.
like that's I don't even know if they're saying words or if they have like well I guess actually I'm sure all the different sort of factions in this movie have like their own language that was developed, but
Mhm.
that's kind of funny to me. I think personally my I really love Chamberlain and his voice and his whole deal with being creepy and stuff, but I think maybe my favorite voice in this movie might be the dying emperor who's like
Oh,
I
yes.
am still emperor. Like it's so fun. I don't know why. It's like it's so iconic to me the way he talks.
Yeah.
And he was voiced by Jerry Nelson,
Yeah,
who I'm not sure if Jerry Nelson puppeteered for any of the characters in this movie, but he also voiced the High Priestess, which is the dude in the red robes. Hold on.
I think, yeah, I don't know. I think you're right.
Yeah, right. But the High Priestess is puppeteered by Jim Henson, or High Priest. Are there two different priests?
Wait,
Shit, I don't know.
is this the guy who was like, we have to kill the Gelfling?
Yeah,
And then
that
the
dude.
general was like, no, take her essence first, then kill her. And the guy's like, but we have to kill the Gelfling, it's a prophecy.
Yeah,
Was it
that's
that guy
the
or a different character?
yeah. It was the red dude.
Okay.
That's the. Oh wait, hold on. High Priest, Dark Crystal. That's not how you spell crystal. Oh wait, okay. So not him actually. He was voiced by somebody else that I don't know. But I was wrong. Jerry Nelson voices the how rude the one with the finger forks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because that was also the one that when I think, oh no, it was when Chamberlain initially brings in Kira,
Yes.
and it's that Sketsy and the one other one with like the bigger bill.
Gelfling.
Yeah.
Oh, with the big
And then
nose.
that one, Yeah, and then the other one's just like screaming, just like the whole time as they're going in there, like,
Yeah,
and
which
then the general's just like, what is happening right now?
well, and I always thought that was kind of an interesting reaction to put into the movie too, because
Mhm.
I know that like the Gelflings are supposed to be the most human like, even though there's no humans in this movie, but
Yeah.
they're supposed to be our sort of bridge, just to help with like embracing like the different characters in this movie, or like the world, inhabiting the world. Um,
Mhm.
and you are right, Derek, with them speaking Skek.
Skek.
Well, the
That sounds
Skek.
like a disease. This is like a disease.
Oh no, we've all caught the
I
Skek.
I diagnose you with Skek.
Please, I'm very sorry, ma'am, but I diagnosed your husband with Skek. Oh, how rude! Oh, how dare you! But yeah, they did. Um, I think originally Jim Henson, because Jim Henson's philosophy was that he wanted it to be a total fantasy where everything is made up from like top to bottom.
Yeah.
So that would mean that the Skeksis had their own language and they spoke it, and it was like they had lines that were all like ka ka and all this like grumbling and sort of very sharp kind of consonants and these weird sort of sounds. So but I think they that did not test well with audiences because no one knew what the fuck was happening.
Yeah.
Which I mean, understandable, and I don't think there were subtitles either. So it was like I guess people didn't really know what to make of that.
Yeah.
So but it's still, I think it's still the same actors actually that voice their characters. It's just now they have English dialogue, and I think there's even more dialogue actually to add more context. But like there are certain points in this movie where you can tell that their lips aren't like moving or their jaw isn't moving, but it's like maybe a
Yeah.
little bit off screen or maybe in the back, or it doesn't even really matter anyway because since they're puppets, they're a lot easier to dub over because
Yeah.
they don't have the dexterity that we do. But I do appreciate the effort that Jim was trying to make with like trying to make the ultimate, like it's a total fantasy. Um
Mhm.
and so I can at least respect the effort, but I'm also curious if they were able to dig all the old dialogue out of the archives and maybe release a
Yeah.
version of the movie where it's like the original
Yeah. No,
Skeksis language.
that would be really fascinating to see.
Release the Jim
Yeah.
I have,
Henson cut. Well, actually, there was a I found a work print of the movie a while ago, last year actually, and it's like absolute potato quality, black and white. You can barely see anything,
oh,
but it is 7 minutes longer than the final theatrical cut. And mostly, what I remember the changes being was that. Have you guys seen that, by the way?
I haven't. No, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's if I can find it, I'll send it to you guys. But basically most of the changes were like in the very beginning of the movie. Like I know the narration was cut a bit differently. It's all there, but it's like differently paced because there was like another scene there, I think, or alternate shots, I think. And there was even another mystic that, and he's listed in the credits despite not
Mhm.
actually despite being cut out of the movie, but that mystic talks to Jen before Jen leaves to like go alone on his adventure, on his hero's journey. And I can see why stuff was reorganized and sort of cut out, just because it helps with the pacing of the movie, like helping it get along. And honestly, I really love how the movie opens. So I'm sort of glad they made that change. But at the same time, actually, I think that one mystic, I forget his name, Miskirk or Mikirk.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, someday I have to learn the real names of all the mystics and the Skeksis and the Urskeks. If they have names, they don't have names, do they? Maybe.
Maybe I don't know. I feel like they don't have names.
They seem like the type to not have like like a step up from Madonna. They don't not even or Prince. Not even. No, we don't need names. Get that out of here. But yeah. Oh, I did want to mention. Damn. What was his name? The cinematographer for this movie.
Oswald Morris.
Yeah, Ozzy Morris. This was his last film. This is the last film he ever worked on before retiring.
Oh, he did The Wiz.
Yes, yes, he did. Which is another movie I need to see.
That movie has the same production design.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that was
78. I want to say, yeah, 78.
Oh, I'm confusing it with Return to Oz.
Oh, Return to Oz,
which I also need to see. I need to see both of these movies.
Yeah, that was 85. So he already passed away by then.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
I think.
Right.
Oh no, he passed away in 2014, but he retired after The Dark Crystal.
Yeah,
I'm guessing,
so
that was his last movie.
1982. Yeah.
Okay.
And so he shot all the footage for this film through a light flex, which is like a unit that you attach to the front of your camera that gives a faint color tint to the entire scene. And there are for a lot of the shots and stuff, they also like the Mystics house pad village. I'll call it a village. there were a lot of different lights that were fitted with like a purple filter in front of it, so that it would the light would be a bit different in some of those shots. And Ozzy Morris felt that it was important to have a sense of magic, or like to give that fairy tale feel to the movie by having that overall kind of color wash to the picture, because and this all goes back to like Brian Froud's original sketches that Jim Henson had him do in 1978, 1977. It took like 5 years to make this movie, by the way, from like beginning to release. And it all started with Brian Froud, because I think he had like a book or something that came out in the late 70s, and then Jim Henson saw it and felt like his style would be perfect to make his Dark Crystal movie, and that his Brian Froud's characters could actually live and breathe and be manifested into the physical space. And then, of course, the next step is like, how do you create those characters? And I think Gary Kurtz stated that another atypical thing with this movie was that the original artist for like designing the creatures, like they would the sculptor or like whoever was doing the illustrations would pass that on to a sculptor, and then that sculptor would make something out of plasticine, and then they would like figure out the design, and then figure out how you would do the puppet, and then from the puppet you would do a screen test, and then Jim Henson and Brian Froud would look at that and figure out what works, what doesn't work, what can we do, and then repeat that process over and over again until you get the final design, and then that goes on to the sculptor so they can make the final design, and then that particular artist for most of the characters on this movie, they would do their own sculpting, and then they would do their own mold making to like the final mold of the characters, and then they would do the finishing texture work for all the like skin and feathers and all the weird gross or even like the eyeballs, painting the eyeballs and stuff. And then they would even in certain cases they would sew their own costumes together, and that everyone had like different groups for what like specific characters they were working on, and the end result was that a lot of everyone's group felt very, very attached to the characters that they were making, and even to the point that they really wanted everything to look good. And this is in contrast to a lot of movies where like you might design something, but then that goes off to a different artist who might make
Yeah.
like paint an eyeball, and that goes off to a different to the costume people who make one costume or two or three or whatever, and then that goes off to someone else who's doing the plucking all the hair for the eyebrows and whatnot. So instead of moving across all these different departments, it was more sort of like centralized to like a specific group of artists working on specific characters, and I thought that was that makes a lot of sense to me to do that in that way. Um, and I think part of that was also Jim Henson wanted to make a more organic sort of feel to the movie, and then that was essential to like creating these characters that everyone's gonna be watching. So those have to look the best first and foremost. And so I thought that was just really cool. And oh yeah, and I was surprised to hear that this movie was co-directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz. Did you guys know about
Yep.
this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I knew about
I saw that in the beginning when the Skeksis were like staring into the crystal.
I never pay attention to credits, so I get like that's all lost on me. I even and sometimes I make it a habit to try to like read the credits for certain things, and I'm very distractible. I never pay attention. So
I only remember it because it was like this wide shot. I think it was like right before or right after they had like the logo,
oh
and there was like this wide shot of all the Skeksis like transfixed on the crystal, and the crystal's like dead in the middle of the shot, and then above it was like directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz. And I just thought that was like an
right.
interesting shot to like put that credit there.
Okay, yeah, I can picture it now because because like also that makes sense to me that you would do that because directing is a very a hard job.
Yeah.
And so working with someone that you know would make sense.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I could be wrong, but I think also one of the reasons why he had Oz co-direct the movie with him, like obviously besides them being like best buds and just always working together and everything, is I think it's because like you have to like, kind of like remember what Henson was doing at that time, which is like really insane. The one documentary on Disney Plus that came out last year about Jim Henson's life, I think goes over this very well. But I kind of already knew about this just through other YouTube videos I've seen and stuff. But like, because like Henson was doing like he was making this movie, plus he was still producer on Sesame Street. Plus, he was still a producer on The Muppet Show and still doing some puppeteering work for The Muppet Show. Plus, I think he was still developing Fraggle Rock at this time as well.
Oh,
I always forget. I always forget what
Yeah,
years Fraggle Rock
I
aired.
believe so.
But he was doing that, and then like I know the one Sesame Street movie followed that, but it came out in '85, so that was probably like in pre-production in some form. So like just like he was like going back and forth between London and the US, just like doing so many things, so many different shows and movies and all this kind of stuff. So like honestly, like I think that's like one of the reasons why he had Oz co-direct with him, just to like kind of like not have so much on his plate. But he just he just really always liked to work, I guess, just always taking on new projects and stuff. It was kind of
Mhm.
crazy.
yeah, and I mean that's a lot to work on like simultaneously. Like that's like four
Mhm.
jobs, dude. Like holy shit.
Yeah, and like every week he was traveling back and forth between countries. Like it was really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, between New York and England,
Yeah.
which is like oh my god, and being jet lagged and having to go into
Mhm.
work to where you're like puppeteering a thing like Kermit the Frog here, and then going back to England where you're like a weird gross demon like oh the Gallifrey. That's amazing. Jim Henson's a different breed, man. That's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Or maybe just a different work ethic. I don't know. He was. I mean, I'm sure he loved every minute of it, though. Even though it was
Mhm.
Yeah.
hard and even though it was a struggle, I'm sure
Yeah.
he loved it. Um,
Mhm.
Jim Henson did say that he felt his strength with the Dark Crystal was that it was more visual, because it was his vision for the movie,
Hmm.
right? But
Yes.
he was able to focus more on the visual aspect with like composing shots and like camera movements and stuff, while Frank Oz was able to work with all the actors and their performances and how they were moving and how they were interacting and what they were doing when, as well as performing himself. So I feel like having that separating those two elements is pretty smart, and I think it works in the end result because of how well the two men knew each other and how they would
Hmm.
easily communicate between each other. Because that's once you like split the directing now that uh you're like you don't have one head, you have two, like a hydra. It's two heads now that you have to talk to. That means that everyone on set has two people they can talk to about what they're doing and what they have to do or something. So that would also mean that Jim and Frank would have to be in constant contact with each other, so that way they don't like um get anything misconstrued or contradict each other or anything. So I'm sure that was hard, but also I think it was worth it in the end. Um,
Yeah.
and so
When you said two heads, I just imagined the two-headed monster from Sesame Street.
I
I mean, I don't even think we'll play
Yes.
either one of them. I think Richard Hunt played that monster anyway. So
I just pictured the two-headed dragon from Willow. Have you guys seen Willow?
I haven't. No.
What?
No, I haven't either.
Okay, I will say I think I like Labyrinth uh a bit less than Dark Crystal, but more than Willow, because Willow is kind of, I don't know, it has a weird kind of tone to it, just
Is that a Ron
because.
Howard movie, or is that somebody
Yes,
else?
that is a
Oh,
Ron Howard
okay.
movie, story
Yeah, Ron
by
Howard.
George Lucas, but directed by
Okay.
Ron Howard
Yeah.
for
Because
1988.
I remember they were making like a remake or a continuation of it a couple years ago where it was more like a mini series or something. Because I remember seeing like ads for it because the guy I can't think of his name. He
Warwick
played
Davis.
might have been him. It was the actor who played the one Ewok in Star Wars in episode 6, and then he also played one of the bankers in the first Harry Potter movie, I believe.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's Warwick Davis.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay. I saw in like ads he was in it, and then they were like Willow, and I'm like, didn't that come out in like the 80s? And I'm like, oh, I guess we're doing like a remake or something
Yeah,
of
in
sorts.
the Disney Plus tradition of having a show to accompany their legacy stuff. I don't know. That
And now
was
you can't watch it.
Oh yeah, I'm so upset about that, because I'm glad I watched that show when it was coming out, because I was excited to watch it, and it was something. I mean, I don't know. It was kind of a weird way to do the show, but at the same time I still had fun and it was enjoyable, but it's just also I'm not even really that big of a Willow fan anyway. I'm just kind of like it fits my vibe. So, I enjoyed it pretty much. But it's just I think they pulled it off Disney Plus because
X right off, right?
that's uh, that's a shame. That's a shame. We're never gonna see that show ever again. That's never gonna make it to physical media in any
Yeah,
way.
no. 'Cause then
That's
now it legally can't. It's so dumb.
yeah, which is, I mean, and I heard that Warwick Davis was like, "What the hell, man?
Hmm.
What the fuck? What you had me make your show and promote it, and now it's gone? How dare you? I can't believe
Yeah.
this." I mean, that's how I feel, at least. I can't believe that. Even though I'm not a big fan of the show, it's still like, leave your stuff up for people to watch.
Hmm.
Because that even goes back to sort of the George Lucas philosophy about how the test of your film or your whatever is Wait 10 years, and people who grew up with it will come up to you and tell you that they loved it. Because that's what happened with the Return of the Jedi. That's what he told Warwick Davis, I think. Because that was like Warwick Davis's first movie when he was like 11,
Mhm.
playing Wicket, the Ewok,
Yeah.
everyone's favorite Ewok. And I guess I wasn't alive in 1983, right? But as far as I understand, that movie was sort of had a mixed reception. Um, but then I think George Lucas gave him advice that if just wait 10 years and people will say, or 15 or 20, and people will say that it's their favorite movie. And now look at Return of the Jedi. A lot of people
Hmm.
say that it's their favorite Star Wars movie,
Yep.
and
Hmm.
Mhm.
I think that's totally valid. Um, so I feel like with and I don't think this is necessarily a problem with streaming, but it's a problem that exists on streaming platforms where if you could, or at least Disney Plus, where they will pull a show off and then you
Oh no,
can't watch it anymore.
the one service that has that as a bigger issue than Disney is freaking HBO Max because David
Oh,
Zaslav is like the king of tax write-offs.
oh, oh, that
There's
man.
shows and movies that aren't even on there that were never on there because he wrote them off.
Wow, really? Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still irritated. I learned this because I'm a big Max Fleischer fan. I love the old
Hmm.
Popeye cartoons from like the 20s and the 30s. And I learned that a lot of those were on HBO Max in like 2022 or late 2022. But then by like 2023, they were all pulled from streaming because I don't
Oh,
know
that's
why. No
weird.
one knows why. No one fucking knows
That
why.
that's weird to me
Yeah.
because Warner Bros. Doesn't even have the rights to Fleischer. If anything, I'll expect them to be on Paramount Plus
Yeah,
because
right.
they're
Because
Paramount shows.
Those are Paramount cartoons, right?
Right.
So
Well, actually, I think Warner Brothers got like syndication rights for them because I remember Papa used to air on like Boomerang and stuff like that in like the early 2000s. So I don't know, maybe for
oh
a bit
right.
they did, but like I don't know.
Yeah, but anyway, I just that kind of shit upsets me. Or even like look at because now I'm thinking Jordan, our buddy, is a big fan of Ren and Snippy. But like
Hmm.
Yeah.
On Paramount Plus, there's a ton of episodes that just aren't there. I think, or
Hmm.
like what the hell's the deal with that? Why can they pull individual episodes, but then other episodes are just fine?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so weird.
Yeah, that's dumb.
I mean that's just the byproduct of the streaming era not being fully thought out. Just chase the clout and chase the hype
Yeah.
without thinking everything through. That's basically what it is.
My father chased the hype of streaming, and then he pulled off everything for a tax write-off. That's how Baby Joker scams Gotham City by making everything a tax write-off. Oh, anyway, um, I think that's pretty much what I had to say about Dark Crystal. If you guys have any more thoughts or feelings about the movie, I'm very happy to hear them.
Um,
I mean, this was already kind of mentioned earlier, but well, this is something I mainly noticed when they're the podling's essence is being taken away. Um, if that was some sort of like electronic thing they did, or if they were doing some sort of form of stop motion. Because the
mm,
way their faces just kind of like go inward and their eyes turn white,
Hmm.
it like the animation, if that was animation, kind of reminded me of like Michael Jackson's Thriller when he's like turning into the werewolf.
Yes.
Like it had like a similar pacing to it.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if like the whole stripping of the essence was like animated or if they like had some sort of machinery in said puppet that made them more ghastly.
mm,
Because I know when Kira is like losing her essence initially, like there's a shot that primarily is focused on like the bottle gathering the essence, but to the left you see her hand growing longer. because she's aging. And so I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
is that animated? Like, did they put some sort of like contraption in her hand to do that? Or I wasn't sure how that was. But I thought that was another like interesting thing.
Yeah, or maybe a combination of techniques, depending on the
Yeah.
shot, because I need to look into how they did that, because that's a cool thing to recreate, man. That's like I kind of wish more movies would do stuff like that, of like something that's like grotesque enough that you're like, maybe you notice it, maybe you don't, but then also once you see it, it's like, what the fuck is that? Because I think my idea might be would be that they have some sort of like that hand or that face is a specialized face that is like sealed or something, so that way they can have a vacuum pull out the air from the puppet, so that it's like it suctions to like an inner working of the face, or even the opposite, where you start off with it being sucked and then you fill the puppet with air and then reverse the footage,
Yeah.
because
Because
oh,
oh, sorry.
you go ahead.
I also remember at the end, like when the crystal is like fully pieced together, I guess. And the ballons are like, oh, when the one like turns towards the camera, you see its eyes go from white to like a regular like pupil color. And I was like, is that like another like, did they do something with the puppet with that or what? Because it's with the other one, like it's in a group and it turns around and you see its like eyes change.
Yeah.
So like it's literally like a split second of a shot, where you don't really see it, but I saw that and I was like, I wonder how they did that since the these puppets are like all practical effects. So I don't know.
Yeah, because even like or like even during the any essence draining scene,
Mhm.
the puppet's eyes will like change color or like have a
Mhm.
certain glow to it and looks very ghastly, but I couldn't tell if that was like done in post and like tracked super well, or if that
Mhm.
was like maybe something in the eye itself, like a light in the eyeball, because those eyes are made of glass, I think,
Mhm.
or maybe some of them are made of plastic, I think, but um well, actually, I mean, Derek, you remember in David Lynch's Dune how their blue eyes would be like, those are done in post, but like you could
Yeah.
kind of tell it was done in post, right? Because it's not
Hmm.
tracked super well every shot. Um,
Yeah. No, you could definitely. I think you could definitely tell there.
so I mean, well then that's gotta be in camera, right? For Dark Crystal, for all
Mm.
their eyes.
Mhm.
I feel, yeah, I feel like most effects like that had to be done in camera. Just because I like both for the time and just, yeah, for the kind of movies, I can't imagine how they would have done that in post. Really, I mean,
Yeah.
knowing how insane the wizards at the Jim Henson Creature Shop are, like I wouldn't put it past it being in camera. They probably found a way to do it.
I mean, also given that it's a puppet and not a human being, I mean, I figure you could finagle a way to get a light in that little tiny head. Because also, they're not really moving, thinking about it, when they're
Mhm.
strapped in the chair. So I wonder if maybe that's like a whole separate other special puppet to be drained, to be zombified.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I gotta look into that, because I mean, that's such a great effect too. That really stuck with me, seeing
Yeah.
like the first podling having his essence drained, um, and even like, because also at the same time, because I know Jim Henson prioritized like facial movement with these puppets,
Yeah.
so that even like with the lips, they would like quiver just a little bit at the sides, and you can see that with the podling, with his like little lip as he's like breathing, and it actually
Mhm.
looks like he's fucking breathing, even though he's not
Hmm.
he's not alive at all. but he
Yeah.
feels so alive. Or even when they stop the drainage, he like goes back to breathing laboriously.
Yeah.
So that puppet has got to be like a different, like full hand puppet where they're able to control the full now that he's moving. Um, so that's yeah, I gotta look into that. But yeah, Derek, any final thoughts on the Dark Crystal?
Not really. I feel like I've said what I wanted to say. It's a very beautiful movie. I also personally think it's a very important movie as well. And I think we need more movies like this for like family films where they're not afraid to be dark and scary, I guess.
Yes.
Uh, just because it truly is just one man's vision, just put the screen and like no notes there. And we also need more producers like Gary Kurtz just greenline stuff like this. Like
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I I really appreciate this movie for existing.
Yeah, same. I totally agree. I'm so glad that this movie exists, and well, also I feel like I guess maybe sometimes it's hard to trust that like if you let your artists do what they feel they must, that your film is not going to succeed. I mean, even look at the Dark Crystal. It didn't really do that well in theaters, right?
Mm.
Like it
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's a box office bomb because that
Oh
hurts
yeah,
to speak out loud, but
I mean, no. I mean, it wasn't even the bomb actually. No, because it broke even. So
right, which is
Yeah.
good, but
yeah.
that's also not what a lot of execs might want. With
Hmm.
they probably want to quintuple their earnings, right? Which
Yeah.
you can't always do. Um, Not to mention the great thing about movies is that you can re-release them, right? And then
Mhm.
more people can watch them and be like, "Oh, I remember this. Let's go see it." And then boom, more money, right? Right?
Yep.
Like, am I insane thinking that? Like, people should do that more, like with their classic movies. Uh, anyway, um, oh, actually, I just remembered something. Just a final thought. I think Derek, you mentioned like how in the 70s and 80s, more synths were more popular with scoring music and stuff,
Right. Yep.
and that reminded me of another one of my favorite movies, Legend, directed by
Mhm.
Ridley Scott.
Mhm.
If you guys have seen that movie, there's two or three actually. There's three versions of this movie, two of which are available. Um, I think the one is the American release, and the other uh is a different release. And the main difference is both stuff that was cut from the American version, but also the scores for each of these versions for the movie are totally different. The longer version is scored by the fabulous Jerry Goldsmith and sounds
Oh yeah, Jerry
absolutely
Goldsmith.
beautiful. It
Yes.
sounds majestic, dude, in this movie. Um, but then the American version is scored by I think they were a band, Tangerine Dream.
Mm.
I think they were a band in the
Okay.
80s, which also sounds really cool. Like it sounds really, it's like a really ethereal sort of synth pop 80s sort of score. And in a way, it actually does kind of work with the movie, despite Jerry Goldsmith's score being more suited to the type of movie that this is. Because, I mean, really, the whole movie is uh, our princess, I think, touches a unicorn, and then the devil is like, "I have you now," and that's the movie basically. Of course, there's a lot more to the movie than that. It's like an hour 40, right? But that's basically the movie in a nutshell, and I really love it. I'm actually not sure which version of the movie I prefer. I think I prefer different parts of different sections of each version of this movie, but um that's just a weird example to me of like how a score can totally change a film depending on what the score is. So
Oh yeah, definitely.
I definitely recommend people watch that movie. It's got a Tim Curry in it as Darkness, the giant red devil man with the giant horns, and he delivers a fabulous performance in this movie. So, yeah, I guess maybe to close out this episode regarding the Dark Crystal, one of my favorite things about this movie is that at the very start, or like whenever we see the castle, we hear a couple of sound effects that are used for this movie are the BBC thunderclap and space lightning. Those are both used for especially at the start of this movie, or like when the Skeksis first get together, you can like hear it outside, and those two sound effects are some of my favorite fake thunder, fake lightning sound effects. And those are two sounds that you guys definitely know from like cartoons or like a Halloween special or something.
Yeah.
Yes, like those are two classic sounds, and I think this movie might have been the first place I heard them. So I can never thank this movie enough for what it's given me in my life. And yeah, I just had to close out on a sound note. So anyway, dear listeners, thank you for listening. If you have made it this far into the episode, we always appreciate your support, and you can follow us on our YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can get your podcasts. You can follow our Instagram for our updates and stuff. And TikTok is dead.
Apparently not.
Yeah, that's confusing to me. TikTok is dead, but not dead. It's back.
Mostly dead.
Somehow TikTok returned. It was banned for like 3 days, and then
Not even. It was like 12 hours, I think.
oh really? Oh, I'm behind. I didn't even make a TikTok. I don't know anything about it other than there's something about voice filters and dancing. That's all I know about TikTok. I'm an old man. I'm an old grandpa. I don't know jack doodly about TikTok or anything. But anyway, if that still exists, you can follow us on there. We have a Patreon if you want to spend money on us. I will gladly accept money because I am a whore and I will shell out for anyone who pays me. And I thank you, dear viewer, for listening in to another episode of the Cinema Dose podcast. Have a wonderful day and don't miss the Great Conjunction.
Oh, dang, I messed it. Not again.
We gotta wait another 300 years.
I'll still be around.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be fine. Bye.
Bye.
Peace.
And as for the television's so-called plan, Batman has no jurisdiction. He'll find him and make him squeal. I know the squealers when I see them.